Finding high-quality mental health care can be daunting and exhausting. That's why Cerebral offers convenient access to online mental health services, including therapy and medication management. Cerebral's diverse clinician team can help with anxiety, depression, insomnia, stress, grief, big life changes, and more. You can schedule and communicate with your care team through Cerebral's mobile app and attend your sessions from the comfort of your own home. Get started with or without insurance. Plus, you can now use FSA or HSA. Start your first month for 50% off at Cerebral.com/ACAST.
Hello, it's Dave. I'm here with my wife, Cathy.
Hello.
And you're listening to The Cinemile, where we walk to and from the cinema and talk about the movie we saw.
Except for today,
where we are watching a movie that is not available in the cinemas because it's a Netflix produced Will Smith movie called Bright. So this is the age we're living in now. We don't have to go to the cinema anymore. There's big budget $90 million movies being delivered directly to your living room.
Did this cost $90 million?
It did cost $90 million.
Wow.
Fun fact.
So $80 million of which was Will Smith's salary.
Possibly. Which means it's probably a bit of a foreboding indication for our podcast.
In what sense?
Well, if Netflix win the war of the movies,
they'll never win the war of the movie theaters because they make all their money on popcorn and 7-Up and sweets.
Yeah, but I think movie theaters are in decline. 2017 had the lowest box office taking in America in something like 15, 16
That's
years.
also been attributed, though, to the lack of original movies.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem.
That's a problem.
Which is a nice segue to this movie.
Yes.
Which is an original movie.
Yeah.
Which Cathy knows sweet F all about.
I know actually nothing about this because I've not even seen it suggested to me on Netflix.
Yeah, but how often do you go on Netflix? You go on my Netflix.
Yeah, I go on your Netflix, so maybe you saw it already.
I've seen it. You see, Netflix are they don't serve you things over and over again that you've already seen.
So I've never seen it. So all I know is that...
What do you think it's about?
It's Will Smith.
Yeah.
I think it's sci-fi.
Okay.
I mean, I've deliberately not looked anything up, and I think it's getting panned from some headline I saw somewhere that I didn't read. So I'm very excited to watch it.
And that's how media is consumed in the year 2018.
Well, no, it's just that I didn't want to see any spoilers because I knew we were going to watch it tonight. That's all.
It's Cathy said to me before we sat down, hey, do you want to watch that movie that I know nothing about? I saw a headline about it that I didn't read.
But I'm interested to see Netflix commissioning such a big movie. They did commission a kind of relatively big one last year that starred Brad Pitt as a war.
We watched some of that. It was terrible.
Yeah, we turned it off.
Name of it.
We didn't finish it, and that's the difference. This is why I prefer watching movies in the cinema, because I will sit in the cinema and I'll watch a movie unless there's something terribly wrong with it. When I'm at home, if a movie's not interesting, I won't necessarily finish it. And it's not the same experience of being in the cinema, which I love, which I'm about to recreate. So I'm off to make myself some popcorn. But however, I am in my pajamas. And that's a bonus.
And I'm going to talk really loudly and have my phone on. Yeah. And I'm going to be kicking Cathy's seat.
So yeah, we're off to watch. What's it called again?
We're off to watch. It's called Bright.
Bright.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll watch it all tonight. I hope it's not really long.
I don't even know.
I don't know.
We're not. We'll tell you what the plot of this film is on the other side because I'm kind of interested to see Cathy's reaction.
Okay, and I won't even read the synopsis then. No. Okay.
All right. So we'll see you in exactly as long as it takes to to watch this movie, which we don't know how long it is. So well prepared. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Why is there a fairy in the bird feeder again?
Good afternoon, officer. Fairy lives don't matter today. That's it right there. Now take the little homie out LAPD style like you do.
Oh, and you keep doing all your gangster stuff. I'm just trying to sell my house. Don't worry about that.
Everybody's just trying to get along and have a good life. All of the races are different. Just because they're different doesn't mean anybody's better or worse than anybody.
Hey, where's the diversity hire?
I got a dude in my car. I didn't ask for it, but the whole world is watching.
Boy, it's okay. You don't like me.
Man, I'm not out here to be your friend. I need to know if shit pop off that you got my back.
Can't hide it, Wood. Humans have physical tells.
Like the face. What's my face?
The human who needs a lot more conjugal love type face.
Do not wink at me like that.
Hello, listeners. We're back, and you are experiencing some form of time travel because while mere moments has passed for you, a whole week has passed for us because it took us that long to watch this stupid movie.
I feel like a whole year has passed for me. I cannot remember. I actually had to listen back to our intro because I couldn't even remember it, and I can barely remember the movie.
Like so long ago. I remember a world before we saw this movie in the long ago.
And so, firstly, actually, to my earlier point that I just listened back to about when you're not at the cinema and you're actually just watching a movie at home on your TV, you can pause it when it's boring.
Well, this
now
is
we must have paused this. We must have watched this at least over 4 different.
I think
viewings.
we watched it in sort of 10 to 15 minute chunks because it was all we could tolerate. Which, admittedly, in the film's favour, it's not the ideal way to consume any movie. But
but you wouldn't watch a good movie like that.
No. It was impossible. Some movies they say it was impossible to turn off, or some pages are impossible to put down. This was impossible to pick up.
We only did it for our podcast, so that's how dedicated we are.
So this was for you,
yeah,
dear listeners. Thank you so much. So let's give it. We did promise to give a very quick plot synopsis. I think you should do that, Cathy.
We promised.
Oh,
so I was wrong.
The intro that we just listened to.
Oh, I've forgotten.
But so you didn't know anything about it. You thought it was sci-fi.
I thought it was sci-fi. It's not sci-fi. It's kind of it's fantasy, and it's as if the Lord of the Rings was historical in this. It's like present day, but post Middle Earth. So there are orcs.
Yeah, so say a few thousand years have passed and they've developed in the same way that humanity would.
Yeah, so we have humans, orcs, elves, a brief centaur, dragon, but it's set in like LA today, and it's directed by the writer of Training Day, and it has 2 cops in it, one of whom is an orc and one of whom is Will Smith. And
he's the first orc cop, which is a big deal. So
I would say I love the setting.
Yeah,
I didn't
same.
like the plot, the execution, or the writing.
Or the acting. Good actors, bad acting.
Yeah, and a shame because it's really original idea for setting.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
like so good.
With
I'd love
the
to
first
see
5
somebody
minutes.
else do this.
Yeah, the first 5 minutes I was like, I love this. This is so cool. And then Will Smith beats a fairy to death with a broom. It's like, wait, what?
So we won't do too many spoilers yet, but that's very early on, and it's in the trailer.
It's terrible.
Is like, how are we supposed to like him as a character when he's xenophobic? He literally beats another species to death in front of us, and it's sort of played for laughs.
And it wasn't funny.
And also his neighbours, this is also in the trailer. His neighbours sort of go, yeah, give him some of that LAPD style loving, as he's beating this tiny creature to death, which felt like, considering the current climate with police brutality and everything,
well, they also said orc
awful. Lives
matter at one point, so it's a bit on the nose.
The whole thing is a very poorly executed metaphor for race, and you can't. It deals in the most obvious cliches,
but it's terrible. Never mind the cliches it's dealing in. It's just so poorly written and so badly acted and so unfunny. I've actually never seen Will Smith be so charmless in a movie.
No, and because the movie wants to be sort of Bad Boys, and it wants to
be Training Day and Bad Boys, and with their funky background of Lord of the Rings, and it's just none of those things.
But it's trying so hard and fails so spectacularly.
And Joel Edgerton was really bad in this as well.
No, but I feel bad for Joel Edgerton because I think I really, really like him. I think he's a superb actor.
He's great. I mean, I just watched him in I watched him in Loving, which he's really great in. It's like, wait, you've gone from Loving to this?
He directed and starred in The Gift, which is a great little horror movie, which I'd recommend. But he's trying here, and the poor guy, like, he plays the orc, and he must have sat in makeup for 6 hours every day
for nothing
to march out and deliver this, some of the worst dialogue you'll ever hear.
Yeah.
But I think he's doing a good job here, the best he can do. Because
no, he's underplaying it. He played it so underwhelmingly that he's just playing this boring, listless drip of a character.
His character's supposed to be earnest and idealistic. He wants to be a cop more than anything, so he turned his back on his whole race, to the point where the way it comes off is naive and sort of mentally challenged.
At one point I thought,
unusual.
I genuinely thought he was maybe portraying someone with like an intellectual disability. I was really confused by what he was, Joel Edgerton. And then Will Smith was, I think they were trying to make Will Smith not very intelligent either, because the way he was speaking was really weird. Like, the dialogue was probably the worst I've seen in a long time.
I wrote down some lines of dialogue. Okay, for instance, this is literally a line of dialogue from the Orc Cop. My badge means more to me than the air I breathe. Like, that's something a 13-year-old would write. It's also the worst form of writing, because it's characters telling us things with their words instead of their actions.
Yeah.
It tries so hard to be clever and funny. There's all these quippy, like, back and forth lines, but I swear to God, they're copied and pasted from a script from 1993 from a Michael Bay movie that was rejected. Here's another one I wrote down. There's like, they shoot someone in the head, and then he turns to the other and goes, "They don't teach that at the academy."
Oh god, that was terrible. And we have to say as well, aside from the dialogue, how dreary and gloomy looking and ugly it was.
No, yeah, it suffers from 21st century post Dark Knight Christopher Nolan syndrome.
Yeah,
where every movie wants to be gritty and hard biting,
so dreary
to
looking,
the point where you can't do that and be fun at the same time, and so the tonal conflicts are all over the place,
and not on the small screen. Like, okay, maybe in a cinema, if it was shot well enough, that really muted color palette might look good, but just watching it on your TV and you're streaming it over Netflix, it just looks crap.
Yes. And also, this movie I could not see the $90 million.
No, I couldn't see it
at
anywhere.
all. It looked cheap. The action scenes were very poorly executed. There was maybe one, not a spoiler, there's one involving a car and a gas station, which had some nice little storyboarded moments, but it's pretty much, there's a lot of like kung fu in this. There's like ninja elves, which sounds a lot cooler than it actually is.
You're actually describing a different movie than what I saw.
Did you not see the ninja elves?
I think I just missed. At one point I was like,
right
oh
out.
wow, there's a centaur, like that's really cool, and then we never saw him again.
But that's one thing I think the movie did well. It's sort of like, I like that it sort of incidentally dropped in all this stuff. You see a dragon flying in the skyline. You see a centaur in the background.
Yeah, but that you can
felt kind of
incidentally drop
fleshed out.
stuff in if the bones of the movie, like the actual plot's interesting. But the actual plot was so dull as dishwater that they wasted the setting, which could have been amazing if they had had an engaging character at the core with even a vaguely interesting mission.
So the plot of this movie, if you want to know, we will, again, not spoilery, but it's essentially a MacGuffin prophecy, chosen one. It's like it's a cookie cutter any fantasy movie from the past 100 years. It's like so underwhelming, so pointless. You'll see everything coming a mile off, and it's boring.
And speaking of plots, we should go to spoiler sofa.
Right, we're on the spoiler sofa. We have moved.
Yes,
we've moved. We have a sofa. We only ever sit on this sofa to talk about spoilers.
Yeah,
it rarely gets used.
Rarely.
So what did you want to talk about specifically?
I really have nothing to talk about because
so why did we move all the way over to spoiler sofa?
I just full disclosure, we finished it yesterday. We're recording this today. I don't really remember the end. So I've nothing much to say because it was just such a barrel of cliches.
Because you were looking down at your phone for most of it. Cathy doesn't like big action scenes. This was all action. Poorly conceived action.
I love a good action scene. I don't like a grainy, gritty, grey, tedious Will Smith lumbering around acting like the worst acting I've ever seen him do. And of course he ends up being a Bright, which was like, when that turned out to be a surprise, I was confused because I thought, but surely we've known he's a Bright the whole time. Does the movie really think that this is
so boring,
like
so
some
obvious.
sort of that was like the climax? But I thought that was actually something we were inherently supposed to know the whole time.
So for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, which I'm assuming is most of you, because I wouldn't recommend watching this.
Well, apparently a lot of people watch this.
A Bright is actually, well, we'll come back to that point in a second. A Bright is basically a wizard. It's someone who can use magic.
No, it's somebody who can touch a specific wand.
No, it's someone who can use magic, has the affinity for magic, and then they're able to touch wands.
Yeah.
Yeah. Not a specific.
I like that we're arguing about what the Bright is.
I know, who gives a shit?
And we know Will Smith's a Bright because the movie's called Bright and it stars Will Smith. And in the third scene, somebody says to Joel Edgerton, "You're guarding the Bright," and he was paired with Will Smith.
Yeah, whatever. But back to the point of who actually watched this. So Nielsen, who are the statistics.
Getting proper mental health care can help you feel more like you. That's why Cerebral offers convenient access to online mental health services, including therapy and medication management. Cerebral's diverse clinician team can help with anxiety, insomnia, relationship issues, workplace stress, and more. You can schedule and communicate with your care team through Cerebral's mobile app and attend your sessions from the comfort of your own home. Get started with or without insurance. Plus, you can use your FSA or HSA. Start your first month for 50% off at Cerebral.com/ACAST.
Service, who do a lot of TV ratings. They tried to calculate how many people actually watched Bright. Now Netflix famously don't release their numbers, but I think they used their social measuring tool to sort of determine how many people watched it and talked about it. And I've forgotten what the number is, but it equated to, if they then calculated if each of those people had bought a cinema ticket, it would equate to $100 million opening weekend in the US alone, which makes this movie a massive success. However, now there are factors to that. Obviously, not everyone who watched it might have gone to pay money for it. You know, they sat at home; it was in front of them.
Exactly.
So that, you know, there's some things there.
But the Netflix model is a funny one because Netflix it's so different from traditional TV or movies, right? So Netflix have spent the money on this movie.
Yeah,
you could put the movie in quotation marks. Then they actually, at the end of the day, whether 11 million people watch it or 100,000 people watch it, it doesn't matter because they don't rely on advertising revenue the way traditional TV does. So they don't need big numbers to tune in. All Netflix care about is that people know they're commissioning movies and value their subscription.
Yes.
So it's a really different model, and I think it's detrimental because if it doesn't matter if people watch your movies or not, then all you need is a high concept, which this does have, which is really cool, and a big name, which this does have, and then
people say, "Oh, you know, Netflix are must-have because they're releasing
they're making this amazing
Will Smith cinematics." So
Yeah.
you feel like whether you watched it or not, you're getting value from your subscription,
Yeah.
or more importantly, because we are all subscribed. Most people are already subscribed to this. It's that you won't cancel your subscription because it feels like you'd be missing out.
And that's what they're doing cleverly.
Their model is FOMO.
It's FOMO. And for me, as I said, it was never served to me because I never saw it because you'd already seen it and we share an account. But if I had seen this, I would have been like, "Oh, that's cool. That's a cool synopsis." I'd have added it to my list and I'd have never watched it. But I would have felt value for my subscription.
Now the thing is, long term, that clearly isn't, as you said, it's not a sustainable strategy, because eventually, if you kept churning out bad content, people would unsubscribe. So I think this is probably a blip for Netflix. They've had quite a few blips now, but they are achieving quite a lot of quality successes and they're winning awards.
Yeah, it's such an interesting business model, and no one in the world really knows what to make of it. I mean, they're at this point spending billions a year on content. To what end are they making money? Is it like the Emperor's New Clothes? Like, nobody knows, but everyone subscribed to them, and it's become part of kind of the national and international like TV consciousness. Everyone has it.
Yeah.
Like Stranger Things, everyone watched that. Like I think within the first couple of days, they had something like 15 million downloads on it based on those Nielsen numbers. Like, that's huge.
It's massive.
And you're talking about a global TV phenomenon. But are they making any money? I don't know. But anyway, back to Bright. Honestly, back to Bright. I have nothing else to say about this movie, so I completely hand the floor over to you.
I've got a few things to say. So I liked the premise. I liked some of the world building. But that's kind of it. Everything else was terrible. The writing, as I mentioned, is terrible. The characters aren't well defined. Will Smith is supposed to be this. I think the script, and it's by a guy, he's called Max Landis, who did Chronicle, which was quite an enjoyable sort of superhero found footage movie, but I don't think the strength was in the writing there. It was in the sort of novelty and the direction. But the writing is... he hasn't decided what he wants these characters to be, and the characters aren't telling us who they are, except by the end we're supposed to sort of think that Will Smith is this grizzled cynic who's been through a lot, but the movie hasn't shown us any of that.
I felt like he was a sequel,
that.
kind of a sequel to him in Bad Boys, or Independence Day, or like it was relying on the fact that we've seen Will Smith as a young gung-ho cop authority figure, and just assuming that we'll extrapolate from that now he's a grizzled old cop, and with no basis other than that it's Will Smith. I think that, like, he was, as I said, it's the worst I've ever seen Will Smith in anything, and like you said, maybe blame the direction and the writing for that.
He was phoning it in.
He was. I don't know if he was phoning it in or if everything he was given was so bad, because I know it's the same director as Suicide Squad, which was also really bad, but Will Smith wasn't this bad in Suicide Squad, maybe because he'd better actors to bounce off or something. And at some point,
Suicide Squad is a masterpiece compared to
yeah, it really is. Like, why they're having him be so ill-spoken didn't make sense, because he was speaking just really poorly and like cursing all the time, and I wonder if it was part of that.
Was weird as well. It felt Will Smith feels like he should stay in the PG-13.
Yeah,
line.
like he did not suit a character who's like cursing and like speaking like real like slang. It can't come out of his mouth properly. Like, he cannot pull that off, because he's like, you know,
he's too
cheesy,
likable.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Like, it just doesn't. He's a cheesy actor, and this did not suit him. And why did the character have to be like that? You know, he's a cop, he's a married man, he's a dad. We get all that in the first few minutes. Why does he then need to be going around for no reason and cursing? And part of that, I thought, was probably because Netflix don't worry about classifications and things like that, and it was like they wanted to just cram as much swear words as they could into it.
But actually, to the point where I wrote down more dialogue here. There's a whole argument where it's after he's killed the cops, and he's trying to get the reason out of the orc about why he let the guy go, and the orc's saying things like, I fucking let him go, and he says, and Will Smith says, well, why did you fucking let him go? And he says, I fucking smelled him, okay? And it's just like the word
so
fucking
bad.
is inserted into every sentence for no reason.
And we're not averse to cursing. Listeners of this podcast know we'll swear, but it's just when it's
when the swearing is taking you out, when it doesn't feel like somebody would have organically said that, then you can hear the writing. And I think this whole movie falls over because of the writing.
It's not just the writing, it's everything. It's the direction, it's the cinematography, it's the plotting, it's the whole thing. It's not just the writing, and it's the acting.
But it's also some of the world building, because, as we said, the world building was probably a little bit of a strength. It's an interesting premise, but
then they just threw it all away.
But it falls over on some of the logic and some of the references they make through me. So fine, we're to believe that this is an alternate universe where it's a fantasy land and they evolved in the same way we did, and may have some of the same things. They have cities. It's LA exists, but they reference the Alamo. At
that
one
was
point.
weird.
So what, is history the same? Like, why would the Alamo have happened? And also, Will Smith makes a Shrek reference, and it really bothered me.
I missed that
in this universe of fantasy creatures exist, that the movie Shrek would have been made, which is based on fantasy fairy tales.
Maybe Shrek is such a pure piece of art, you know, like the Mona Lisa or something like that it would just always have existed.
Right, Shrek exists in all universes.
In all universes.
In all possible
it's a point
timelines.
of reference in any parallel universe. You will always have Shrek.
Did you notice how many mustaches there were in this movie?
Yeah, they all have mustaches, which we were thinking, was that like part of the code of this universe or whatever?
I think it's lazy cop wardrobe. I think there was like, they're cops, they should have mustaches. There was one point in the locker room where there was like 4 cops hanging around, and 3 out of the 4 of them had mustaches.
There was also a thing where it was like, oh, by the way, Will Smith is like entirely financially, you know, bankrupt, and his house is about to be repossessed and all this. But that just came out of nowhere, completely unexplained as well. It's like, well, he's like a full-time cop and his wife's a nurse and they've only 1 child. So if you're going to tell us they're bankrupt, you need to explain why. Like, is he a gambler? Like, what happened? But no,
man, it's the pension. I need the pension. Yeah. It just feels like this is lazy cop writing, and the bad cops were terrible. Their
He's
motivations
only 5 years
were
away
terrible.
from retirement.
It's like exactly every lame cliche. What am I trying to say? Lame cliche was pulled out here, which is really disappointing when you consider this man produced or was created Training Day.
It's weird that Will Smith and obviously enjoyed Suicide Squad so much and the critical reception it got that he made another movie with the same person.
Let's work together again.
Yeah, I find it really bizarre.
This whole thing just feels like it should have been made and released in 2001. Like, doesn't it? Like, it's so like there's a whole
but it would never have been good in 2001. It wouldn't have been good.
No, but it might have gotten by. Like, it felt like but it felt like it was made then.
Yeah, it doesn't
well.
feel at
it
all.
It looks bad. There's a whole bit where Will Smith, when he shoots the cops, do you remember? And it goes like into slow motion. He shoots all these bad cops.
I forgot about that.
It's one of the most baffling and embarrassing scenes I've ever seen. It went into slow motion and Will Smith like shoots all the bad cops like it's a big surprise. And the whole thing is played to this what can only be described as an emo track.
I forgot about that.
Like,
and
like
it happens again later. Again, you can't just suddenly have a whole scene in slow-mo, stylized, and then go back to your normal movie again. But with no reference, like that didn't happen enough in the movie that it made sense. But it didn't only happen once, it happened twice. So I was like, why are you doing slow-mo, emo? I know what you mean about the naughty thing.
But you know what I mean? I can't even describe it, but that's a real naughty style of action.
It was.
I'm thinking of like, it's post-Matrix imitation.
It also tried to, I think they tried to make it look a bit like The Fifth Element at one point, the way the elf looked and stuff. But she was like, and talk about like the female characters in this, the
played
female
by
elf.
Noomi Rapace.
She was just
a villain.
Drip as well. She
got
terrible.
nothing to work with though.
Yeah.
She was just like,
she's just nothing. She's just an elf who covers her hands with her ears.
Oh no, sorry, she's the bright that they're protecting.
Yeah.
Sorry, yeah, no. Yeah, but she was like, and then it turns out she could speak English the whole time. And just didn't. She was with them the whole time, and then at the end she goes, "Oh yeah, I can speak English."
She's
and
just
here's the whole plot.
Mute.
Here's the plot of the movie, by the way, in case you needed to know.
Yeah.
And there was another bit in that annoyed me, where she was talking about she brings the orc cop back from the dead, right? Big moment, and then everyone's like, "Oh my god, he's the chosen one," and then everyone's like, "It's a miracle." Why would miracles exist in a world with magic? That doesn't make sense.
But
Everyone
maybe
knows that magic exists.
Well, look, I don't know. Maybe magic doesn't stretch to bringing people back from the dead. Like, say, for example, even in Game of Thrones, it's unusual for someone to be brought back from the dead. Like in any fantasy,
I guess
that's not necessarily a power somebody has.
Okay, fine.
I
but
don't
the
think we
movie
need to nitpick on that.
Fine, but the movie didn't make any of that clear. Another thing that really annoyed me about that scene was the whole like, he's about to be shot by one of the other orcs, and then turns out that that's the orc that he saved from the beginning, and it's all come back. I was like, oh, kill me now. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I could go on about everything that this movie did wrong.
Yeah.
But the fact of the matter is, it was just a dreadful, dreadful piece of muck. It's one of the worst movies I've seen for ages.
And it's such a shame because it's such an original, cool concept. So that it's an awful shame that. Sorry, I've just banged the mic. It's an awful shame to take such a cool original concept and to just blow it, and to blow it with $90 million. You know, we're not talking about a small little indie movie here. Yeah. Like, you know, Netflix, just take a moment, take a deep breath, commission good content, and spend less money on it. But that's at the end of the day, they just want the publicity for something like this.
You're right, though. That's the problem. There's less scrutiny.
Yeah.
If this was 20th Century Fox or Warner Brothers, and they had a lot riding on this, and they want to build on its success, and they need people to get to the cinemas, and they need numbers, and they're more accountable.
Yeah.
So the stakes are higher. So that's why they go through reshoots and re-edits, and everything is like. Is nitpicked to a tiny degree. I feel like whoever the overlords at Netflix are, they probably just said, just let them make the movie.
Well, that's what a lot of TV producers say. They love working with Netflix. For example, like the Baz Luhrmann show, The Get Down, or even like Stranger Things season 1. They were given such creative freedom. That's why, you know, TV makers like working with them. And in some ways, it can make talent flourish. Like Stranger Things, in some way you can have a Baz Luhrmann Get Down, which turns out to be a complete disaster that they spent whatever hundreds of millions of dollars on.
Well, that's our opinion. We only watched one.
No, it was a disaster. They didn't recommission it, and
fine.
it tanked critically, and no one watched it. And Bright, I would consider a disaster as well. So it's a funny thing, creativity where you give a new talent, maybe like the Duffer Brothers, an opportunity and they'll flourish. But you take someone who's blatantly just made a really bad movie like Suicide Squad, you should probably rein him in a bit and actually just, keep an eye on what he's doing if this is the end product. Or maybe not commission him to do anything. Maybe him and Will Smith are just such best buds that the only way was if he directed it. But I think we've probably dedicated too much time talking about this movie.
let's wrap this up. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, you can hear more of us on all the podcast places where you hear podcasts, and please subscribe to us wherever you listen to your podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, drop us a review, please. Give us a rating, and you don't even have to review us if you don't have time. Just hit the little 5-star button, and it'll really help us out, and that's all we ask.
That's all we ask. And we're going to make it to the cinema soon. We've had difficulty thus far getting to the cinema together this year.
Yeah, you went without me.
I went without you
last week. Scandalous.
We are getting a granny sitter over for a visit soon, and we will go to the cinema together.
Granny Linda's coming.
Yes, Granny Linda's coming.
And we've got some guests. We're trying to line up some guests this year. So yeah, lots of exciting things
happen. And if you think there's someone who should be a guest on the cinema, let us know, and we'll try and see if we can get them. That could be fun. Okay, thanks for listening. Bye.
Bye.
I'm already knowing ain't nobody got my back. They don't teach that at the academy. No, they do not.